So Toys R Us is back in the UK. Well, kind of. Hello and welcome back to Jacob's Toys. Please do like, share, subscribe and all of those things. All support to the channel is very much appreciated. The mega store that was Toys R Us. Toys R Us was the place to go. Everyone remembers that advert.
There's a magical place, we're on our way there, with toys in the millions all under one roof. It's called Toys R Us.
And now you are going to be singing that for the rest of the day, because once it was in your head, it was stuck. Now, I thought that this was kind of a retro advert and I just kind of had it ingrained in my head from when I was a kid, but no, they recycled it year after year after year and the graphics even got better on it. Look.
There's a magical place, we're on our way there, with toys in the millions all under one roof. It's called Toys R Us. There's millions such every all under one roof. It's called Toys R Us, Toys R Us, Toys R Us.
Toys R Us closed about 5 years ago. It basically went bust, and much to the disappointment of so many people, they announced that they were going to close their doors. And a lot of the stores here in the UK at least, and I believe over in America as well, have just kind of laid dormant. The Toys R Us kind of logo is still up on the front. The doors are just closed and there's been nothing else put in there. I know at least 3 that are quite close to me within driving distance that are just sat there, just going derelict. And it's a real kind of shame. It's just kind of a reminder that this big toy store from our past is just gone. It's just not there anymore. And as a dad with kids of my own, I was really gutted to hear that they were closing, because I've got so many fond memories as a kid growing up of Toys R Us. One in particular is at Christmas time when the Ninja Turtles came out. I remember queuing up for hours. It felt like absolutely hours queuing up just to get my hands on those Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle figures. I think it was for a Christmas one year, and the queue literally was hours long. We got to the front and they sold out of Donatello, I think it was. I say I think it was. I know it was Donatello because I didn't have him. Got to the front of the queue and they were just gone, which was a real shame. But I remember Christmases and birthdays, just that money, when you got spending money in a card from a relative, you would go to Toys R Us and you would buy the toy, the newest toy, whatever it was. I remember going there for, like I said, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, for Lego, for He-Man, just for so many different things. And I was really gutted to kind of not share that experience with my kids. Now, in its absence, Smiths grew bigger and bigger, and Smiths became the toy store, the big toy store. Over here in the UK, we've really only got a few really big chain toy stores, and that's Smiths and of course the Entertainer as well. But Toys R Us was the king. It was dominating. When it disappeared, Smiths obviously became that kind of replacement. Now, the Smiths toy stores are very similar to what Toys R Us were when I was a kid. You know, just aisles and aisles of toys. You had like a kind of a boys aisle, a girls aisle, like a Lego aisle. You had an aisle with bikes. You had an aisle with art stuff. And you had like a whole baby section as well, which is very similar to how Smiths is laid out. I mean, if you walked into a Smith store and didn't know that it wasn't a Toys R Us, you wouldn't know that it wasn't a Toys R Us, if that makes sense. But the announcement came a little while back that Toys R Us was going to make a return, and it was going to be online only. Now, I know that Toys R Us closed pretty much everywhere in the world. I think the only place it stayed open was Canada. Please correct me if I'm wrong on that one. But it closed definitely in the States and definitely here in the UK. And a little while back, there was a big announcement that Toys R Us was going to make a return. Unfortunately, that return wasn't quite as triumphant as we all imagined, and it was online only. Now, I never personally shopped on the Toys R Us online website. I don't know if anyone did, but there was never really any kind of big movement or big noise about Toys R Us online. I think the magic of Toys R Us was walking in there and seeing what was on show. And when they had their closeout sales, things were dropping in price. I remember there being things like Star Wars Black Series and Marvel Legends for ridiculously cheap. And a lot of collectors went in there and picked up various different versions of things. And of course, when we're talking Marvel Legends, they had exclusives as well. And it wasn't just specific to the Marvel Legends line. Toys R Us had exclusives. There was Toys R Us exclusive figures. And some of those, even today, are still quite sought after. And very recently, they announced that Toys R Us was physically coming back, that Toys R Us was going to be in the high street again, that they were going to make a triumphant return. And I found out that one was opening up near me in Chelmsford, in Essex, and I was very excited. I saw the kind of online news articles saying that Chelmsford was going to get a Toys R Us, and I was like, you know what, this is it. But it did beg the question, because in Chelmsford there is a huge Smiths toy store and a quite sizable entertainer as well. So I wondered how that was going to affect the dynamic of toy stores. Was Toys R Us going to return and just kind of squash out all the competition? So I went down to Chelmsford High Street on the opening day to have a look. Now, I should say as well that on some of the Facebook community groups, people were posting about Toys R Us opening up and that people weren't turning up, which I found quite bizarre. Toys R Us did announce that the first 30, I think it was, first 30 children that came in was going to get a free goodie bag. They were going to meet Jeffrey, of course, the giraffe from Toys R Us adverts and Toys R Us branding. And they were going to get a free goodie bag that included toys and stuff up to the value of 20 quid. That's £20. So I went down to Chelmsford High Street. I took 3 of my children with me, thinking that this was going to be some kind of spectacular phoenix from the flames. And I found out that it was actually inside another store, which is WH Smith's. Now, for anyone that's not familiar with what WH Smith's is, it's essentially a chain newsagents, should we say. They have a big stationery selection. They have a big magazine and kind of greeting card section as well. And of course, just calendars and things like that. So the idea of Toys R Us being in WH Smith's didn't strike me with confidence. And I know the WH Smith's in question. It's a pretty large store, but it made me wonder how Toys R Us was going to fit in there. So here is WH Smith's on Chelmsford High Street. And as you can see here, there's a small little sign that says Toys R Us, just to show you. And because it was opening day, they had all balloons and everything outside, which was quite fun. When you go in, you're greeted by this small little sign that just points to upstairs. And when you get upstairs, there's Jeffrey and there's like a photo opportunity as well. But there wasn't many toys. There wasn't anything that you couldn't pick up somewhere else. And it just kind of felt like I was in a WH Smith's that also had toys. Like I said, there wasn't a huge amount on offer. Even the tickets that gave the price were all labelled up with WH Smith's branding. So it just felt a little bit sad. There was even a photo booth here for passport photos, which really killed the illusion. And the really sad thing I thought was that when you actually kind of panned off to the left a little bit, you could see the post office. That the post office was literally right there. The elevator was done up with Jeffrey, which was quite cool. But when you look at it, it really did just look like the corner of WH Smith's with some Toys R Us branding. So nothing great, really. As you can see, I was massively disappointed with this. It was just sad, I think. Now, of course, the reason for this is the IP, the intellectual property of Toys R Us, was sold out. So these pop-up stores can open up under the branding of Toys R Us with, of course, Jeffrey as well, and basically promote themselves as a Toys R Us, because for all intents and purposes, it is a Toys R Us. But a small corner of a newsagent's upstairs isn't really a Toys R Us, in my personal opinion. But as you can see from the video, it was just a little bit sad. It wasn't the Toys R Us that I remember. It really was just an overpriced corner of the newsagents that sold toys, and it doesn't fill me with a lot of hope. One thing for sure is I don't think Smiths have any competition, and I think the Entertainer is holding strong as well. Now, in Chelmsford, you have the Entertainer that's actually on the high street as well, but Smiths is a little bit further out on a retail park. But there we go, Toys R Us has returned to the UK high streets, even if it is just a small concession inside a newsagent's. For what was a huge giant in the toy retail industry, it's a real shame to see it get to this stage. It was just really sad to see and kind of tainted my memory of Toys R Us. In my personal opinion, I think we need to just let it go. Those of us that are holding on to the memory of Toys R Us and what it was to us as children, we need to let it go. We are not going to see Toys R Us return in the way that we hope it would. I think Toys R Us is gone, and that's a shame. Thank you very much for watching. Please do like, share, subscribe, and all of those things. And of course, if you've got any opinions or thoughts on this, then please do pop them down in the comments below, and I'll try to get back to you. But until then, I'll see you soon.